In a world where women evolve to self-reproduce and men are relegated to the minority, the youngest man in the world chooses between doing his obligations as a servant or following his heart despite the entire world being against him. In a backyard garden, Andrew shows the plants that he's tending to. During an interview, he admits he doesn't see himself as someone special despite the circumstances of his birth, and it's not something he's ashamed or proud of. He goes about his day, pouring himself coffee while watching the news. His employer, Tara, is also interviewed. After almost 3 years of working for them, she's come to value Andrew because of his good work ethic. She admits it's difficult finding men as domestic helpers, especially since women's wages are more expensive. Despite valuing him, Tara is concerned about Andrew's presence around her daughters, for fear they'll yearn for something they shouldn't, vaguely referring to a man's love. Over breakfast, Andrew caters to the kids' needs before sending them off to school. Meanwhile, Iris, Tara's partner, talks to the interviewer about how much she loves Andrew's presence around their children. She thinks it's enriching for the kids to be around someone who's prime and active. Tara doesn't share her views, but politely agrees from a historical viewpoint, hoping that in the future, their daughters and granddaughters can give accurate first-hand accounts of what men are like, and Iris just sighs. Andrew discloses that at 37 years old, he's the youngest man in the world. The odd phenomenon dates back to 1953. Back then, Father Hermano was still a young priest assigned to the Vatican's Congregation of the Causes for Saints, and they were responsible for extraordinary events that could be deemed divine miracles. One such event is Immaculate Conception, which boomed to 67 reported cases that year. Professor of Men's History, Ajala, narrates that the spike in fatherless pregnancies concerned the Catholic Church because a central tenet of their faith involves Christ's Immaculate Conception. Gordon, a former professor of genetics, argued there was no way to scientifically validate the fatherless pregnancies. At the time, the best they could do is prove that a man isn't the child's father, but they can't conclude there was no father. After all, humans require copulation to reproduce, so the only logical explanation is that the women were lying. One of those mothers is Helen, now an elderly woman. She recounts feeling pregnant, an impossibility considering she hasn't been intimate with her husband Richard for a year. When the doctor confirmed her pregnancy, Richard assumed her supposed infidelity. Helen would eventually be vindicated decades later, but in the 1950s, no one believed her and she was forcibly evicted from Richard's house. Unsurprisingly, male politicians dismissed the claims as outlandish and impugned them to women as being impressionable and hysterical. Professor Ajala noted that all men-run governments, regardless of their differences, ignored the claim. To Gordon, those governments' behavior was understandable because the idea of self-fertilizing women threatened men's egos. As Andrew hangs clothes and plays with the kids, he recognizes that his work isn't for everyone. Still, he's excited about it, and that's something not many guys can say. Dahlia, Tara's daughter, also admires Andrew for his fun and caring personality. If fathers were still a thing, she'd love to have him for her baby daughter, Violet. Dahlia also admits she finds him handsome. This is now the third household Andrew's worked for, but he finds this the most challenging because he's looking after 6 kids of varying ages. Still, he likes keeping himself busy, such as putting Violet to sleep while everyone eats dinner. While Tara coaches her daughter's soccer team, Andrew lags behind, lugging the women's items. He remarks that working for women you like makes the job easier, and he finds that Iris' easygoing and kind attitude keeps him at ease. However, he keeps a low profile around the more conservative, by-the-book Tara, preferring instead to stay out of her way. It's a good reminder that regardless of his attachments, he's just an employee. While watching the practice, 2 elderly men named Jim and Reggie approach Andrew. They're having fun talking about their employers, but their laughter annoys a teenager. She marches up to them and demands they follow the rules against congregating in groups of more than 2. Andrew, wanting to avoid conflict, backs off despite Jim's protests. Andrew admits he'd be a pilot or an architect if things were different, but he makes the most of the opportunities he has because things are unlikely to change. The women lament how their claims weren't taken seriously and how men never listened, but Professor Ajala notes that anger was simmering beneath the women's calm exterior. Everything erupted with Sister Isabella's case. Despite living in a secluded and remote convent far from men, she got pregnant. The church, concerned that her giving birth to a daughter challenges the biblical narrative, wanted nothing to do with her. Father Hermano claimed the church thought it was for the best. Surprisingly, the nuns broke their silence, and soon, news about Sister Isabella's fatherless pregnancy sparked an uprising. Women demanded the government acknowledge the phenomenon. This forced the UN to investigate the claims in 1955, despite science's vehement rejection. Professor Ajala discusses that women seize power from the dominant men. The women went on a strike after individually deciding that they had had enough. Gordon recounts this moment when his mother headed out without making dinner. Richard swallowed his pride and asked Helen to come back, but she suddenly realized she didn't want to. On the subject of art, Tara discusses her love for Iris paintings, but she doesn't like Iris' current phase of painting Andrew doing mundane tasks. Concerned about manlessness, or the reduced number of men in the world, Iris paints Andrew to keep the issue alive despite these paintings not selling. She claims she's not obsessed with Andrew as it's just a part of her process, while she discreetly snaps photos of him from a window. Painting him is natural thanks to him always being around, and he sometimes helps her with the chores. Iris wants to capture Andrew's spirit in her paintings, the same spirit that her grandma loved about her grandpa, but Tara looks annoyed at the topic. Meanwhile, Dahlia shows her sketches of Andrew for her art class. She reveals being interested in his body, especially his arms. Gordon narrates that when fatherless pregnancies increased and normal pregnancies decreased, the world accepted the development as parthenogenesis, or self-reproduction. When it happened with humans, spermatozoa became obsolete and incapable of penetrating egg cells, even through artificial insemination. Hence, all self-fertilized embryos are female. It was a while before Andrew was confirmed to be the last male. In school, he got unwanted attention and found women's lack of attraction to him challenging. When he graduated high school, he realized he won't get the opportunities women enjoy. When Eleanor Hamilton became the first female president of the United States in 1965, she initiated governance motivated by women wanting payback. A major policy was established in 1967 where men were replaced by equally qualified but more capable women, resulting in mass layoffs. Not feeling welcome, men moved to rural encampments in an exodus, but when it became clear women were doing just fine, an organization for male liberation called MLO refused the New World Order. Their leader, Darius, intended to regain men's lost power and respect, but when they protested, it resulted in violence from angry women who were suffering from PMS. By 1975, with women's population taking 3/4 of the world, their menstrual cycles started synchronizing. MLO men contended that, soon, women's minds will also synchronize and form a hive mind. Despite the protest's futility, Professor Ajala noted it still resulted in a 3-day monthly holiday that occurred after the world united. The protests were the first challenge to the World Governing Council. Listening to the men's plight, the WGC allocated male sanctuaries across the world where men will be provided with food and entertainment. There, men will live their lives comfortably while respecting nature's choices. Although Darius claims the sanctuaries won't change men's resolve, the MLO didn't do anything. Darius still says they're planning their resurgence, but after 25 years, the MLO still never made a move. Gordon criticizes that MLO's central goal can't be achieved because the government sees manlessness as nature's act rather than a problem. The government even replaced God with a religion based on believing in nature. Continuing, he also points out that humanity eradicated diseases, which are also nature's acts. Although, he quickly clarifies he's not insinuating that the WGC is actively ignoring manlessness to achieve their political goals. Darius views women as short-term thinkers incapable of strategic planning, especially after they scrapped the Defense Department and halted space exploration. He believes true progress requires conflict and considers heterosexual romance as one of its forms. While grocery shopping, Andrew admitted that he thinks he's the reason why no man was born after him. Professor Ajala remarks that a dominant theory will emerge about men's extinction and become the conventional wisdom. To many women, that theory appears to be evolution because they consider men unnecessary and their extinction as penance for corroding the planet. An MLO member speculates that in 1952, a near-Earth object spurred fatherless pregnancies and considers the women as aliens hijacking humanity's reproductive systems. Gordon explains that men's Y chromosomes can't protect against mutations. By 1994, men gathered in a sanctuary were convinced the government ignores manlessness. They vowed to return to power and solve the problem, but their resolve is derailed when they learn the women prepared tenderloin for dinner. As Andrew finishes shopping, he realizes he has survivor's guilt that resurfaces when he notices other men look at him. Tara is ambivalent about manlessness because the men weren't eradicated on purpose. She likens men's extinction to the death of a rock band's last living member, an analogy Iris finds utterly absurd. Author Dakota signs her book on intimate relationships among women. Once men die, society won't need the word gender, but not having gender doesn't mean not having the need for intimacy. Without intimacy, families disintegrate, dooming society. The WGC doesn't accept this position as it's full of conservatives fearing male resurgence. They even have ads informing mothers about discouraging daughters who discover self-gratification. Linnea, WGC's communications director, clarifies that while waiting for nature to remove reproductive urges, they need to ensure women aren't caught up in futile pleasures. Dahlia says women aren't supposed to know about traditional reproduction and are taught not to give in to urges. Since it's psychological, it's better to not act on them. Instead of pointless urges, marriages, the WGC encourages other forms of intimacy, so women grow up believing in love. Olive reveals that while she gets along with her best friend, she is unsure whether to spend the rest of their lives together. As Tara reminisces about being with Iris since 11th grade, she's hurt when Iris dismisses it as proof that she can partner with anyone without being intimate. When Iris emphasizes that Tara is just a friend, Tara hints at wanting a deeper bond with her. Iris points out that men still exist, such as Andrew, whom she's very fond of. Jealous, Tara asks for a short break and excuses herself from the interview. Outside, Tara weeps by the garden and admits hoping Iris and Andrew's thing was just a harmless flirtation, but now it's clear the two are intimate. In the kitchen, Iris says it just happened the more time she spent with Andrew. She walks away, knowing everything's changed between the three of them. Betrayed, Tara claims Iris loves being mysterious, but she never expected her to actually be crooked. Outside, Andrew assures Iris everything will be alright, but unbeknownst to them, the daughters see them kiss. Hurt by what she's witnessing, Dahlia walks toward the house. When Tara sees what her daughters are looking at, she hurriedly leads them inside. Linnea knows some women are still attracted to men, but for the best, WGC banned heterosexual unions and encourages men to stay in the sanctuaries, so the women can focus on their evolution. The sanctuaries themselves are huge, open areas with no electric fencing as men are no longer interested in escaping. Back then, men often wander, hungry for female contact, but Border Patrol agents hunt them down and take them back to a nearby sanctuary. Darius considers this treatment degrading. While animals are protected, men are instead shunned. During the 1998 MLO press conference, Darius shows evidence that their food is laced with estrogen to suppress their drive. Hence, they went on a hunger strike to prevent women from taking their dignity. Gordon surmises that capable WGC scientists injected synthetic estrogen without being detected. Eventually, the MLO ended their hunger strike after only 1.5 days because they needed to eat. Darius doesn't consider the strike a failure, as their continued consumption constantly reminds the world of WGC's injustices. However, Linnea confirms they stopped adding estrogen in 2008 as aging now naturally suppresses men's drives. Darius doesn't believe it, although he looks concerned about his age. In the aftermath of the affair's reveal, Andrew moves out of the house. People wrongly assume that just because he's the youngest man, he's involved in pro-male causes. He clarifies he's not an activist and that just isn't who he is. Andrew places his luggage in the taxi as the family watches. Iris leaves him with one last look before heading back inside. It's now impossible for them to be together as the government won't allow it. Plus, their intimacy reflects poorly on his work record. 3 weeks later, Andrew's work permit is revoked and he's sent to a sanctuary. Although he doesn't think it's a terrible place, it still feels like a prison. He's unable to enjoy himself because his mind is always with Iris. The other men have gotten used to the sanctuary, but that's because they have no reason to return, unlike him. As Olive celebrates her first period, things in Tara and Iris' household aren't the same. Their relationship can't recover because Tara feels betrayed, and the kids miss Andrew, especially Dahlia. Iris tried moving on, but she can't stop thinking about him. Andrew considers how depressing spending his whole life in the sanctuary is, like sitting in a sinking ship. These thoughts prod him to do something. He decides to leave despite the challenges. In the dark of night, he ran as fast as he could, eventually reaching the waiting Iris on the road. He didn't think she received his message and showed up, but there she was. They drive away, but consider the implications of their actions. While none of what they want is possible, living in hiding isn't an option. If they want things to change, they need to instigate it. And so, Andrew resurfaced, his hands entwined with Iris as they held a press conference. Together, they make a shocking request: the right to marry and bear children. To make this a reality, they seek backing from the scientific community and the WGC. Iris also invites other women attracted to men to also speak out. Professor Ajala notes that their actions sparked supportive demonstrations and allowed other women to admit they also like men. Some women argue it's beneath them to just let men die off. The WGC assures everyone that they're taking the calls for action seriously through emergency meetings to consider solutions. Miraculously, through everyone's opinions and support, Andrew and Iris were allowed to legally wed each other in a private ceremony. They captivated the world's attention after Iris was successfully artificially inseminated and is now with child. Tara tries being supportive, thinking that it might also be good for the world if Iris bears a boy, but she personally dislikes the idea of bearing a male baby. The artificial insemination worked after the government managed to trick the egg into accepting the sperm by disguising it as an X chromosome. Helen wishes people were this excited when she was pregnant, but she's also happy about the news because she dislikes the idea of men going extinct, although she admits men needed to scare of near extinction. Darius takes credit, claiming their long game paid off, and now the men have returned. Iris feels like being pregnant for the first time and she's excited, but Andrew breaks the sweet moment by hoping the baby's not a girl, earning him a weird look from Iris. He tries to recover, but she stays silent, and the interview ends on an awkward note.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.